Hey folks, this week we're at AsiaBSDCon, so it's going to be a shorter episode. We've got an interview with Eric Turgeon, founder of the desktop-focused GhostBSD project. If you haven't heard of it, well, stay tuned. We're going to fill you in, and we'll also be back next week with a normal episode. So stay around, stay tuned to BSD Now, your place to be, SD. Hey folks, I'm Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we're glad we have you with us this week, even though we're not really here right now. We're actually over in Tokyo, probably at this moment. Well, probably sleeping at this moment. But but after having a fun couple days at conferences and just enjoying AsiaBSDCon, we'll be back next week with our regularly scheduled episode and all the content to go with it. And I'm sure a long, full report of how Tokyo was. Yeah. So stick around. We'll be right back in a moment with an interview for the week, though, with Eric Turgeon from the GhostBSD project. Okay, we're joined now by Eric Turgeon, who's the, I believe, founder of GhostBSD. Is that right, Eric?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, glad to have you with us today. Thanks for coming on the show. So first up, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get involved with BSD in general?
Yeah, that's kind of weird because I was playing music and I never had a computer before and I want to record myself, and I started using my computer for recording myself and with Windows, and I had always problem with virus and tried to find a way out. I installed Linux, and after Linux I just jumped on a lot of distro, and after that I read How to Be a Hacker from Eric Turgeon, and it mentioned about BSD. I was like, oh, what is BSD? And I Googled, I found about, I installed FreeBSD, and I was kind of lost because I never used an operating system in the shell before. Make more research. I installed PCBSD. Didn't like Kitty. I go back to FreeBSD.
Sure.
And after that, it's pretty much it. It's
cool.
Okay.
So could you tell us a little bit about the GhostBSD project, what it is and how did it get started?
Yeah, GhostBSD is pretty much a GTK project. It was starting with GNOME when we first start, but now then GNOME 3 is not ready. We jumped to Mate, and we're probably gonna stay with Mate. And it got started when I pretty much in the same time that I installed PCBSD, because I was like, I want something like PCBSD but GNOME.
Sure.
It was like, okay, nobody gonna do it, I should start it. That's pretty much how GhostBSD started. And from then, people, when I was talking writing on the forum of FreeBSD with some people, and it was interesting, I find the project FreeBSD, Frisbee.
Frisbee, yeah. Frisbee.
Yeah, and I fork it. It was more easier to me to do it than write it from scratch, because by the time I was not a programmer.
Funny enough, that's how we started PCBSD too. It was all based off Frisbee back in the day.
Yeah,
I wonder how many projects spawned off of that.
And there really isn't one left, which is weird, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much that. That's how it's started.
Cool. So how about the name GhostBSD? Where did that come from? Are you haunting my computer, or is this like a Ghost in the Shell type thing, or what?
Yeah, when you install GhostBSD, you got hunted with BSD.
Right.
No, GhostBSD. It's kind of weird because back in the day, I was trying to make a plexiglass computer box, and I call it Ghost Box. And when I start GhostBSD, my wife said, "Why you don't call that GhostBSD?" I'm like, yeah. And it was because of GNOME and hosting by BSD kind of, and just like GhostBSD but GhostBSD.
Sure.
Yeah. So what's your target audience for GhostBSD? Is it like new users or people switching from Linux, or?
New users, yeah. Mainly Linux user. Try to convert them to FreeBSD. Yeah, and some Windows user too, but GhostBSD it's not at a point for Windows user right now.
Sure. So how would you compare it to PCBSD? I mean, I know you told me it's GNOME based, so that was the biggest difference. Has it diverged more, or is there anything different? You guys probably write all your own utilities, the control panel and all that, right?
From now, the control panel, it's the Mate one.
Okay.
But we're probably going to write our own one soon. Right now, I'm working on a network manager. That's to manage a network, connect to Wi-Fi, and all graphical, making the job more easier. We're working on Update Manager 2. The difference in between PCBSD, it's GTK and what I can say,
QT or Qt.
Yeah, it's like your QT. PCBSD is QT, and we're GTK, and we're a live CD installer that we can install on a system. In between them, we don't use PBI. We use package from FreeBSD, and we use ports.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, I think.
So have you changed anything out of the actual FreeBSD code base? Like, do you do a custom kernel, or is there any other userland type changes?
Yeah, it's a custom kernel. Like the new one, it have all the drivers for the sound card and the network card.
Okay.
We put everything that was possible to compile. We had some line pretty much everywhere to make like Mate and XFC work really good. But it's not much more code on it.
Are there any of these fixes or changes that you're pushing back upstream into FreeBSD, or?
The fix, yeah, for like the third-party software, but for the system, no, I didn't make some. But right now, like I have commented a couple code on your repo for PC sysinstall, and I'm probably going to add more soon.
Cool.
Okay. For those who don't know, that's our installer on PCBSD. That's the backend. So I guess you guys are going to be using that in the future, or you already are?
Oh, since you made it, we use it.
Oh, okay.
Just we make a version beside on every hub. Every time you got a new one, we was putting back our code in, and this time I decided to just add the code with your code.
Yeah. And we were happy to put it in there for you. It's just a couple lines here and there of cases to see if you're on GhostBSD.
So are the ports and packages different? Like, do you have your own Poudre repo or anything?
Not right now, but we're thinking of it. It's the team getting a little bit bigger, and if we can have a dedicated server or a virtual server for that, will be nice to start doing it. But right now we're using FreeBSD port and package.
Cool.
Okay. How about upgrades? Since the GhostBSD release version numbers are obviously different from FreeBSD, how do you handle upgrades?
We use a FreeBSD upgrade. It's the numbers are the same in the system than FreeBSD numbers. Like when it's the next version I'm working on, 4.0 gonna be 10.0 in the system. Like 4.0 is not showing anywhere, but we're soon we gonna jump to the same number of FreeBSD.
Yeah. Cool. So you do use FreeBSD update. So do you maintain your own repo, or how do you deal with your custom kernel and FreeBSD update when there's like security patches for bind or whatever?
Yeah, that's probably going to be an issue for the next coming release. But I'm working on an update manager that every time I'm gonna have a FreeBSD update, GhostBSD gonna have a system update at the same time to add the new kernel.
Yep.
Well, just as a tidbit, if you do any of FreeBSD update stuff, let me know. I'll be glad to give you anything that we've found with running it, because we're running that on 9 and 10 as well, and it's very doable. Just it takes a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I'm working on that, and I'm not lost, but it's a lot of work.
Cool. Well, why did you choose to base it off of FreeBSD instead of, say, OpenBSD, which has had GNOME 3?
Well, at the time I started, it was GNOME 2, and I was thinking of, at one point, when we got problem with GNOME 3 in FreeBSD, but we have kind of planned that we won't stick to FreeBSD, because we have planned that we working on with Mate. We're probably gonna, I should not say that too loud, but we want to do our own desktop.
Oh.
Very cool. Very cool.
We want to have a BSD integrated desktop, BSD license, but it's a lot of work to do. But the work will if we do, the work will gonna be based on Mate.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's a ton of work. My brother, who works for us, has been writing a BSD licensed window manager / desktop for, gosh, 1.5 years now, and it's still, there's still a ways to go.
Still
it's
pretty primitive, eh?
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So is there anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
No, I think it's okay.
Is there any, are you guys looking for more developers for anything specific, or?
Oh yeah, we're looking more developers, but for what is coming, like the integration of the desktop with FreeBSD, we're gonna need help for that for sure.
And so if people wanted to help, is there a certain place they should go?
I think on our website we have a contact us page, and I have my email on the How About Team page.
Okay.
And that's ghostbsd.org, by the way, for those who are looking for that website, where you can check that out.
Cool.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for being with us today, Eric. And of course, this week's episode is brought to you by IX Systems. Go to ixsystems.com/BSDnow. Tell them we sent you. You can get a whole bunch of cool information, including a document on how to prepare to buy a server for open source, things to look for in a vendor, things you should be aware of, things to consider, etc. Again, a great document.
Yep.
Take a look at it. And Alan, what else do you have to tell us about IX this week?
Well, we talk about how my company uses IX for all of our stuff, but and we talked about they have the burn-in process, which has been a great advantage for us, where they run the server for a couple of days and make sure everything works, because as we've learned from studies done by like Backblaze and Google, hard drives most likely die in the first 36 hours of being powered on. So them running it for 4 days first, make sure that if that's going to happen, it's dealt with before they ship it to you. And that just saves you piles of headache.
Sure.
But also, they have this pre-configuration worksheet. It's like 2 or 3 page document they send you, and you can fill it out. And they will pre-configure the server exactly the way you want, which was a big advantage for me, because the server I was buying, in this case, was being shipped directly to a data center in a foreign country. Well, foreign to me. So it was being shipped to Portland. And I was never actually going to physically touch this server. So it had to be all set up exactly the way I wanted by them, so that when it got to the data center, they would just put it in the rack, plug in the Ethernet and the power, and it was good to go. And so they configured everything down to specific BIOS settings I wanted. It's like, I want this and this on. I want, the power settings turned this way, because I want to save power. And I want, obviously, there's normal things like you usually do on a server, so that it turns on as soon as the power comes back on, if the power ever goes out or whatever, so that you can use a remote power switch and stuff like that. But also, it was make sure the AES-NI is turned on. That's something they normally do for you by default, but I would also, change a couple other things in the BIOS, or even, setting the boot order the way I want, because, I'm never going to PXE boot that server, so make sure the network card booting is turned off so that it boots 20 seconds faster, or something like that. And also, they installed the OS and partition it exactly the way I want. I was pretty picky, and they were able to accommodate me anyway. And so one of the other advantages basically is that on top of, getting the nice treatment when you're picking out the server and deciding what to buy and buying it, they have this whole white glove treatment to make sure, you pre-sales consultation, you're talking to someone that actually knows about what you want to talk about. But even once you've bought it, they make sure that it works and that it's configured exactly like you need, so that it can be put in production the moment it gets to where it's going, instead of, normally I would have had to take it out of the box and play with it and configure it in order for it to work. And that was really hard when it was going to be in a foreign country. And, remote hands at the data center cost money it's like $100 an hour. Well, I don't want to be paying somebody $100 an hour to configure the BIOS just so.
Or then the frustration of, that's not exactly how, or the guy on staff at the moment.
Yes. Oftentimes the data center guy knows something about Linux, but not that much about BSD. So trying to walk him through doing a custom ZFS partition setup was just not going to be any fun. And so having them do that was really nice. And one of the other things was, when I bought my big storage server for Scale Engine, that one we were actually going to rack ourselves in our own rack. But, when Stefan got there and there's, the pallet load of stuff, and they ship the hard drives separately and they super pack them. You see the hard drives, the box come in from the manufacturer, and then you see the way IX packs it. And it's like, why doesn't the hard drive manufacturer do it that way? But we were like, all right, so there's 34 terabyte hard drives here times 6 screws in each one. That's going to take a while.
Sure.
And then we open up the box, and they'd already done it for us. They'd screwed all the drives into the caddies. So we put the machine in the rack, pop in the 30 hard drives, and it's ready to go. It took 15 minutes instead of 2 hours.
Yep.
And there was no little screws everywhere. It's like, wow, that was just, we love it. And that's why we buy all of our servers from IX.
Well, of course, because they're running all the latest, coolest Intel goodness
yes,
as well,
that was,
right?
you know, I wanted the latest Haswell processor, and they were able to get that for me. And, you know, also the latest and greatest Supermicro motherboard for that, you know, to support that awesome Intel chip. And, you know, you get that.
And they made sure it all worked out of box for you.
Yeah, and, you know, you'd be like, I have this power budget. Give me the most I can get out of that power budget. And things like that. Yes.
Well, cool.
Gotta love the Intel.
That URL is ixsystems.com/BSD now. Check it out. Get in touch with somebody over there. Tell them specifically what your needs are, and they will come up with a solution that works for you.
Yes, that's you know, that's the way they kind of phrase it on their website. Is like, don't tell us what server you want. Tell us what your problem is, and we'll come up with a solution.
Well, cool. So check that out when you get a chance, and let us know how that experience goes. If you have any feedback, maybe working with IX, we'd love to get some quotes from you guys out in the audience. Yep. That would be something cool to send in. Okay, first up in our feedback section, we got an email in from Dave. So he's saying he was at work listening to BSD Now on his headphones. It was episode 23 about BSD package signing. He was thinking how strange it would be if somebody asked me what I was listening to. They expect to hear some well-known artist performing some well-known song. Instead, I'd say I'm listening to how OpenBSD securely signs applications and releases to ensure they originate from a trusted source. Even though he works at an IT organization, he says it's primarily a Windows shop. He says he'd get such strange looks. It made him smile just thinking about it. The interviews on the shows are great. Many podcasts focus on software news when talking about open source. Open source is not just about software, it's about people. That's a great pull quote, by the way.
Yes, it is.
That's very, very true. So he also says, keep up the good work. Even though he does not yet use BSD, he says he finds the show very interesting and looks forward to each new episode. He says that both Alan and I have good chemistry. The first shows were a bit rough as we adjusted to the unique interaction of a podcast. He said now it comes naturally to both of us.
Well, there were some technical issues in the beginning as well.
Yeah. We had some rough episodes, those early ones, where software didn't work right. And it was just...
Well, the audio delay made it look like we were talking over each other, even though in our ears we weren't.
It sounded fine to us, yeah. But hey, that's all, you know, first season of any show, right? Yeah. There's just those little hurdles to overcome. But yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying the show, Dave. Yeah. And even though you're not using BSD yet, you know, if you keep listening, you watch out. Well, it's going to change.
Half the point of the show is to get the people that aren't using BSD yet and make it so that they are.
That's right. That's right. So glad to have you in the audience, Dave, and appreciate you sending that in.
Yeah. So next up, Shane writes in about CUDA on FreeBSD. He says he believes several years ago that FreeBSD NVIDIA drivers included libcuda, but it's since been removed. I don't know much about that.
I think it was the Linux version of libcuda. It included in the Compat Linux layer.
Right.
I don't know if it ever worked, which would make sense why they'd remove it.
Well, I guess the issue mostly would probably be that the Compat Linux is 32-bit only, and I'm sure the CUDA stuff isn't.
Yeah.
And he asks if both the OpenCV port and how that works with maybe the new KMS stuff, and but also apparently Clang is getting the ability to compile CUDA kernels, and I wonder if that means that you could get, compile something with Clang and then run it on the video card.
That would be interesting.
That'd be really cool. His interest is using the CUDA support to do GPU accelerated rendering with Blender, the 3D modeling application.
Oh, don't lie. You're just doing Bitcoin mining. Or no, not Bitcoins now. That's right. We use ASICs for that. It would be Litecoins or something else. But something like either way. So he asked, is there any FreeBSD support for GPU computing? Do you know anything about that, Alan?
I don't know much about it. Although I wonder if Des or somebody would, because Des works at he's the administrator of the supercomputer cluster at a university in Norway. I wonder he's probably looked at something like that. I don't know that much about the GPU computing, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't do science.
Well, we've had some people ask us over the years, and I know, like I said, the CUDA stuff does not work, is not supported. I don't know about OpenCL and Radeon, if that works yet. Hopefully it will in the future if it doesn't, but maybe there's an expert we could interview on the subject at some point who could give us a little insight.
Yeah.
And if OpenBSD does those things as well.
Yeah. As far as I know, most GPU computing is done for science or for hacking, password cracking. So I don't know how much demand there is for it, but It'd be nice to have that feature, but I personally don't have any use for it at the moment.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, if we find out any more info, we will pass it along,
yes,
Shane.
Maybe we can ask if we just remember to bring it up at the Dev Summit and find out if anybody there knows anything about it in Tokyo.
Sure. I think it came up at one of them, too, at a BSDCon years past. So we'll keep our ears open, see if we can find out more. All right, cool. Well, next up, we have Rob. He says he loves the show, yada, yada. Last answers to his last questions were helpful. He has a couple more now. So he says he started using jails. He's moved his commercial web server into a jail on a PCBSD 9.2 box. Works great, less filling, supports MySQL, PHP, WordPress, etc. Now that 10's out, of course, he wants to upgrade the machine and all of its jails to 10. So he's asking what the best way is to accomplish this with minimal downtime. He says as a workaround, he has a FreeNAS system. He understands that he can run jails and plugins on that. Okay, he can create a jail, move stuff into it on the FreeNAS box, and probably leave it there. But he'd still like to know how one updates a PCBSD system and the jails it's running. So he says he has yet to get a binary update of a BSD system to go without some interesting event occurring. He's come to the conclusion that backing up doing fresh installs always works. Very often true. He said he attempted a 9.2 to 10 upgrade using our new tool, and he said the download of the file failed at 72%, said the checksum mismatch. Well, that's good. It's supposed to fail if that happens.
Yeah, it's better than it going ahead and getting half through the upgrade and leaving an unbootable system. But
that's kind of the point of the new tool. It does a lot of checks like that to make sure everything we've downloaded is legit before we touch a bit on disk, because we don't want to end up with a non-bootable box. So updating the jails, of course you can run FreeBSD update in the jails. Alan, I think you had a suggestion on EasyJail using that to do it.
If you're using EasyJail, the EasyJail admin command has the update command. And so normally what you do is first update the host system. And so once you do that, when EasyJail tries to run FreeBSD update on the base jail, FreeBSD update is going to be like, well, you already have 10. So what are you trying to upgrade? So there's a special flag minus capital U where you tell it what version the base jail is. So that it tricks FreeBSD update by an environment variable into thinking it's upgrading from 9.2 to whatever, because that's what it's actually doing. Because normally FreeBSD update relies on the uname minus R, and basically by passing minus U and then what uname minus R should have been, you'll get the right update. And so that's how you can upgrade from like a 9.2 to a 10 on EasyJail.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, hopefully that answered your question there. I mean, there's a number of ways to do it again.
How does it work with Warden?
Warden will actually run FreeBSD update in the jail.
Right. So I guess you don't use a base jail, right? You have each jail has its own copy of the operating system.
Each jail would have its own copy, because most of the jails would be on different templates, maybe different versions, etc. So yeah, it would run FreeBSD update on each jail.
Right. Whereas in EasyJail, by default anyway, you have what's called a base jail, which is basically a read-only copy of the operating system that's nullFS mounted into each jail. And so it allows you to update that only once, and every jail is updated.
Sure.
And basically, you do that while it's running, should be fine. And then you just restart each jail, and they'll be booted off the new stuff. They run off the host kernel, so the kernel's upgraded when you upgrade the host, but you'll want to update the userland to match, otherwise you'll get fun.
All kinds of bad stuff happens, yes. Don't do that.
Although I have cheated and just installed, like, when I was first updating to 9, I just installed compat 8x in the jails and left them as 8.
Oh, there you go.
It was a very bad idea, but it works.
Okay. Well, hopefully we answer your question. So next up, we have something about virtualized pfSense.
Yes.
So what do you got here, Alan?
Pradrang writes in and asks about virtualizing pfSense. He says he has a Linksys WRT54GL with DDWRT on it, and is starting to misbehave, and he's looking for a cheap replacement. And he says, what's cheaper than a virtual router, right? He says, let's say that I have one machine, which is a VirtualBox host, and I create pfSense guest on it. Can I make my host connect to the internet only through the VirtualBox guest? And is that a good idea? Yeah, you can do that. The way I did it on my machine with VirtualBox was the host machine had 2 network interfaces, one that went off to the cable modem and one that went to the LAN, to the switch. And I created the VirtualBox and bridged to both of those adapters. On the host OS, the adapter that went out to the cable modem was just unconfigured. So it didn't have an IP address, so the machine wouldn't use that one and confuse the cable modem. And it would just have an IP address on the bridge, the main NIC, and with DHCP set up on that, it would actually hit the DHCP server running in pfSense.
That's cool.
It can cause a little trouble when it's first booting and pfSense hasn't started yet. So you might want to do a static IP in the LAN segment that way. But yeah, just using the pfSense as the default gateway, and the machine will route through the pfSense.
Oh, slick.
He says, if I add more machines, would I need to plug in a switch? Yeah, so what you'd normally have is your first NIC goes off to the cable modem, and the second NIC goes off to a switch. And that switch was where you plug in all the other machines on your LAN. And you could still use like your old Linksys as the switch, just don't connect its Ethernet part and go into the control panel and turn off the DHCP server and everything. And then you just use that thing as just a switch. And that way you don't have to go buy a switch. And then you're all set.
Nice.
And he says, are there any pitfalls to virtualizing the router? Like I said, obviously your internet doesn't work until you bring up the pfSense. And it probably makes upgrading VirtualBox a little more interesting, because you'd have to download the update, then stop your router, and then upgrade VirtualBox, and then reboot, and then start it again or whatever. But yeah, your biggest pitfall is going to be while you're rebooting the host machine, nobody has internet, including your host machine. But other than that, I did that for like 2 or 3 years, ran a pfSense in a VirtualBox on top of a Windows machine even at the time.
Scary.
Yeah. Well, at the time, it was my media center computer. So it ran Windows because my remote control driver was only for Windows. So it controlled my TV and was also my router because it had...
And it was on 24/7 anyway, so why spin up another machine?
Exactly. And so it was both my router and my media center. And eventually I split those roles off into separate machines. Because my TV is upstairs and my cable modem is downstairs now.
Okay. Well, very cool, Alan. So that's the end of our feedback and questions for this week. So as usual, we want to mention all the tutorials are going to be posted in their entirety at bsdnow.tv. We want to give a very special thank you to Christian for writing today's tutorial and sending it in. So that's much appreciated. We love it when people do that. Send in the other ones you're thinking about. As usual, send questions, comments, show ideas, topics, or stories you'd like mentioned on the show to feedback at bsdnow.tv. We especially want to hear some tutorial ideas you guys would like to see. So something cool out there you'd like to see configured, or how to do this or how to do that. I mean, get those ideas into us. We'd love to see what you're interested in.
We'd love the idea, and we'd love it even more if you did the whole tutorial for us.
Yeah. If you attach the document with the tutorial, that's even better.
Yes.
Do that also. So as usual, if you have something you'd like to talk about on the show, anything cool involving BSD, whether you're a developer or not, we'll be glad to interview you. Just get in touch with us. If it's something interesting that's being done, folks are going to want to hear about it.
Exactly.
So we'll be happy to put you on the air. And you can watch live Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. We should be back next week from Tokyo. So the show will be back at the same place, same time. And so hopefully a lot of cool news to tell you about when we get back.
Yes. Hopefully next week will be a packed show.
Definitely. So you can't miss it. The week after a conference is always cool.
Yep.
So anyway, hope you guys have a good week, and we'll be talking to you here soon.